We have a guest in the studio. We actually have two right now, and they're having a good conversation. And Steve Millington was commenting sometimes the off it's true, very true. The off air is better than what goes over the air. Got a quick note. We are going to experience a couple of really cold days, maybe not bitterly cold in the next few days. And if you haven't had the furnace checked out at your home, you need to do that like ASAP because you don't want to be disappointed and let down when you try to flip it on and nothing happens or it's not working. I had an inefficient furnace in a home of mine that I was renting years ago for a couple of years before someone finally came by and decided to replace the heat pump. If you have an issue, you need to call the good folks at Ramsey Heating and Electric, and they'll come out and they'll get the job done right, and they'll get it done right the first time. Problem free. Cozy winners are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric, located at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. The telephone number is 678-0459. That's Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. Steve Millington, welcome to the program.
Well, good morning. It's good to be back.
You had a quick comment on immigration and a solution someone threw at you the other day.
Well, over the weekend, I was visiting with a fellow, and he said, I hope that President elect Trump is serious about his campaign promise to build a wall. And I said, okay, that I, is yet to be seen, but I kind of agree. And he said, here's how we do that. We take all of the illegal immigrants in the United States, or as many as we can possibly use, and they become the workers, the labor force to build the wall. We give them a stipulated time frame. They have to work for a year or 2 years or whatever the length of term is, or for a specific section of the wall. And they do all of the illegal immigrants work down there, and of course they get paid. It's not prison term here, but at the end of their service requirement, we give them a green card, which allows them to stay in the country legally. And the green card, as I understand it, becomes their passport to citizenship.
There was a young man who died serving in the Marine Corps. He was from Trinidad, and after he was killed, the government posthumously made him a citizen of the United States. The
Right.
idea being that if you serve this country in some aspect or capacity, that should open the door.
For citizenship. And that's was this guy's argument. Yes, we need to build a wall. Now, whether it's a literal wall or a fence, or there needs to be some specific demarcation between the United States and Mexico because it has been abused greatly. So, and his idea was, let's just use the illegal immigrants to go down and build the wall, and at the completion of their work service down there, they get a green card, which allows them to stay in the United States legally, and it becomes their passport to citizenship. And I thought to myself, okay, that's not a bad solution. It has some wrinkles in it that we'd have to iron out, but not too shabby.
Now, got to switch topics dramatically.
Okay, let's do.
Mr. Denny, the from
Secretary of State.
Secretary of State here in Idaho, says that some of the electors are being harassed who are going to have to vote on December 12th to certify the presidential election. He doesn't say by whom, which leads me to believe it could be from people who we keep hearing about Trump supporters intimidating people, but it sounds to me as if there are people from the other side trying to harass Idaho's electors.
That's and there was articles in both the Twin Falls paper and in the Boise Idaho Statesman newspaper at length about this. And I don't remember hearing about these kinds of issues 4 years ago or 8 years ago about challenges or harassment to the elected electors. And I find it interesting. Maybe it's just kind of a companion to all of this other stuff we're seeing happen across the country, where we have these riots and civil disobedience and disruptions and all of this stuff, the anti-Trump, whatever you want to call it. Now, the people who will represent the state of Idaho as electors are designated in advance of the election, and so we knew who they were going to be, and so it's not kind of a secret thing that just happened. They were on there well in advance, so everyone knew who they would be. Um, why would you call and harass an elector? They're bound by state constitution, you
I know
know?
how this works. You get a call from Florida, and the voice says, "Hi, this isn't Jeb Bush, but you should be voting for Jeb," right? Is that how that works?
Yeah, that's kind of how that works. And evidently, it has reached the point where these four individuals have complained to the Secretary of State about the level of phone calls, and I think it goes way beyond just plain harassment, and that's what Lawrence Denny said in his news comments is that, hey, wait a minute, this is beyond just harassing. We're now becoming somewhat threatening to these people, and it's absolutely uncalled for.
And apparently, this is the political climate we're currently in, with charges going back and forth. We've
Yeah.
got more with Steve Millington on the way in just a moment. Grant Loeb's scheduled to join us just after the 9 o'clock news this morning. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. 20 minutes, we'll call it, from 9 o'clock. It's 39. Our guest in the studio is Twin Falls County Republican Chairman Steve Millington, who has watched over the last week all of these stories that have come out showing that we now have Republican governors in 33 states. I guess North Carolina might still be in dispute. Do they
It
know?
was still in play as of yesterday. I didn't check this morning.
Depending, it could go either way, I guess. That could be 34. And state legislative seats have just around across the country. It's been a Republican tidal wave. It's been growing for several election cycles, including here in Idaho, where one of the top leaders in the legislature lost his seat this past week. And we were told how to pronounce his name by Randy Staples.
Yes, we were. It was
Rushi.
Rushi. Yeah, that's right,
Yes.
Rushi.
And we want to mention just quickly, tomorrow morning at 8:15, Congressman Raul Labrador is scheduled to join us. And yes, I will be asking him if he's planning on running for another office. Um, come on, what's the secret there?
That, you and I have had this ongoing conversation, but I don't mean to interrupt here, but we've had this conversation before. He's not going to do anything or say anything until after he wins re-election to the United States House of Representatives.
Randy's prediction is it'll come after he gets back to Washington
I
in
don't think
January.
you're going to get anything concrete from him until he gets sworn in the first week of January.
Unlike Governor Otter, who, whenever he's on the air with me, I'll ask him about some issue, or I'll just say, "Hey, anything I forgot to bring up," and then he gives me the biggest breaking news story in the state. It won't happen tomorrow. Also, coming up between 8:30 and 9 o'clock tomorrow, one of the representatives from Dr. Jonathan Tripp's office will be in studio, and we'll be talking better health with Tripp Family Medicine. We do it every Wednesday, and this is an opportunity for you too to get call it a little friendly advice from some of the medical pros. Tripp Family Medicine, located on Fillmore Street, directly across from the main post office in Twin Falls. And they are looking for new patients. They can often see you on the very same day. And keep in mind, slogan there, life's too short not to feel good. So you've got this huge legislative advantage in Idaho now for Republicans, which has grown by, what is it, 3?
Yeah.
And so what is this going to mean come January?
Well, perhaps not a huge shift in agenda, because keep in mind the Republicans have had a bulletproof majority in both houses of the state legislature for some time. Uh, some interesting things, I think, behind the scenes between now and I'm not sure when they will have their meetings, but the newly elected members of both parties will caucus somewhere in the state of Idaho and go through the process of reorganizing internally how their legislative uh, branches will function. Um, Clearly, we have to re-elect a Speaker of the House. So Scott Bedke's position will be up for
I doubt
renewal.
that's in any danger.
I don't think that if something should happen
Unless he
there,
doesn't want it.
whoa, we'd have a major change. But all indications are he wants to run again and serve as speaker. So we do that, and then he will take his chief lieutenants to the side uh, before they vote for the speaker. He will try to reorganize all of his standing committees that work as part of the legislative process. And I don't think any. Um, well, there's one. that I can recall right offhand. Um, Rich Wills, who was defeated in the primary election by Christy Zitto, had a chairmanship, and I can't remember now what it was, but it was a position that was uh, chairman. I'm sorry. Anyway, he lost, so we're going to have to assign a new chairman to that committee. Well, as we do that, we're going to have reassigned people across various committee functions.
Southern Idaho, though, still is going to be overrepresented when it comes to some of these committee slots. First of all, Bedke being a Southern Idaho guy,
Bedke is
Maxine
at
Bell.
speaker. We have Maxine Bell, who is
Mhm.
has the House assignment of I don't know whether it's revenue and taxation or finance, but she is co-chair of the Joint Finance Appropriations Committee, arguably the most important committee in the legislature. We have Fred Woods, who is on House Health. I don't know what they call it. Senator Lee Hyder is chairman of the Senate Health and Human Services. Um, how come I'm drawing a blank? Steve Hartgen is Commerce and some other committee. Um,
Well,
Burt
yesterday,
Brackett is Senate Transportation. Um,
a
we
lot of a lot of the southern legislators were up in Lewiston yesterday because I guess the Chamber of Commerce in that Lewiston, Moscow area will bring legislators in, and they have a legislative day just to show them. The idea is to give them some impression on how business and the community operate in that area of the state.
and you know that's very common. Uh, there, if we look at the map of Idaho, North Idaho is kind of way north. And it seems like that just a little bit north of Boise, maybe up kind of by McCall or somewhere, we have a tendency to draw a line across
It's
Idaho.
isolated because of the mountains and the
And
like.
and those guys up there, we hardly remember that they're part of our group. And so it makes very good logical sense for those chambers of commerce in that area to invite everybody to come and give them, hey, this is who we are, and here is what we do, and here are some things we need. And I have heard Governor Otter make reference on several occasions to the economic strength in the corridor between Spokane and Coeur d'Alene. They don't want to be in the Washington side of that border, so they come to the Idaho side, which starts kind of at Post Falls, I think, but I hope I've got the right name there, and progresses eastward into Coeur d'Alene and around through that section of North Idaho. And they are doing tremendous up there.
Although I did see some talk show host who was on some television program, national host, a few weeks ago. He mentioned he spoke to the Coeur d'Alene Business Group at a convention they held in Spokane.
Yeah.
That threw me for a bit. I guess because they don't have the convention facilities.
uh, that would throw me quite a long ways. There is a very notable high end uh, resort. I think it's called the Coeur d'Alene Inn. I might have the wrong name on that, but I have been up there to a couple of conventions, and I thought the convention facilities were uh, very comfortable, very well done, and uh, so I would be surprised that they would go to Spokane to have their meeting.
Maybe they were booked up.
Could have
Possibility.
been.
We got
Now,
about 10.
here's an interesting thing. For the first time in a long time, all of the state elected representation from the city of Moscow are Republicans, and that's the home of the University of Idaho and typically a bastion of Democrat.
Well, the administration and the faculty stayed home, and everybody who actually works for a living, keeping the heat on and mows the grass.
Went to vote.
Right. That could well be how
I think that's what happened.
that works out. I We're looking at, I think, that the power has shifted obviously in Boise because of the passage of HJR5, and now you have even more Republicans. Good for the people? I mean, is it going to be good for us in the long run?
You know, I encourage people to vote for HJR 5 because they currently have a law on the books. It's not a constitutional amendment, but it's just a law that
Mhm.
allows the legislature to review the regulations proposed by the bureaucracies as a result of laws and legislation that was passed in the previous legislative session. So a year ago, we passed bill number one. And so the bureaucracy drafts all of the regulations to implement bill number one. And they have to present them to the legislature to make sure that the regulations are in confirmation with the intent of the bill. And I kind of like to have a tight rope on a short leash on all of these bureaucrats because they have a tendency sometimes to get just a little bit too caught up in themselves. So, from my perspective, I want as much control as possible on the regulatory end of this thing so that they don't get on a runaway. Now, the court system, uh, attorney general and the court end of the thing, they want to have the final control over, is this regulatory stuff in conformity with the law, yes or no? And the administrative branch wants the bureaucrats, the regulatory people, to have all of the latitude that they can possibly have. And that's the three branches of government, each fighting for their own turf. I don't have a lot of confidence in the bureaucrats. I mean, they may be well intentioned, and most of them are really great people, and maybe I'm just being overly cynical here, but I just don't want them making the rule. I think I voted for and anticipated that the legislature would write the rules, the laws.
And we had a Lance Clow in studio with us a couple of weeks ago, making a pitch for passage, and he pointed out that yes, regulations, they have a different name, but they really do have the force of law. So it comes down to just a, it's almost synonymous, right? When you say
Yes,
regulation or law, it really you're talking, it's going to have the same impact. If you're somebody who's out there working in the fields, uh, environmental law or environmental regulation, and they
it's
come along and tell
it's the
you,
same thing as far as
right,
I'm concerned.
right.
It's going to have the same impact in my job, in what I can do and what I must not do. So I think Representative Clow is right on.
Now, the Wall Street Journal said we already had this ability in Idaho. I guess this is just enshrining it now in the
What,
Constitution.
yes, in the Constitution. What happens in many locations, or what has happened in many locations, is that the law passed by the legislature, which gives themselves the right to review regulatory writings, has been struck down by the courts and saying this is one law supporting another law, and it's not written in the Constitution, therefore it's unlawful. So what the legislature wanted to do was make this part of our state constitution, so that it makes it much more difficult for somebody to challenge not the end result, but the process by which the legislature can review and approve all the regulations before they are put into place. So, yeah, we can have a lawsuit, but now they're challenging a constitutional issue rather than a simple legislative law. And so it gives it a considerably more strength and support. It's going to be harder to overturn, and the legislature should be able to just carry on forever.
We wanted to point out, Steve, we didn't spend a lot of time today talking national politics, but you heard me mention in the last half hour, I'm a little alarmed by, I haven't even heard Newt Gingrich's name mentioned, and I thought for sure he would be the Secretary of State. We're hearing some names now that I think that some Republicans who got a little sick and tired of nation building in the last decade, they don't want to be part of this new Trump administration. Do you think that Trump now is overwhelmed and maybe people are telling him you've got to have these people and he's saying okay?
I don't know about the saying okay part. I do think that he is hearing many voices telling him you've got to have this person at this location and this person in this position and this person in this position, and I have volunteered on multiple occasions. I've got a long list that if he would just call me, I could help him fill all of those positions in just a matter of a few short minutes. I'm not a convert to the idea of John Bolton, who was a former ambassador to the United Nations, I'm not really a big fan of him being Secretary of State.
First of all, it looks
I'm
like
just
Captain
not.
Kangaroo. Who's going to take him seriously in this
You know.
situation?
Now, my idea was that Newt Gingrich should be Secretary of State, but for some reason he's not getting any play at all. Maybe they're just hiding him behind the in the shadows here, and poof, he's going to surface somewhere, and we're going to say, "Oh, that makes sense."
And Rudolph Giuliani hinted last night he'd like to be Secretary of State, even though
Yeah.
I don't see any national or worldly experience there. Everything he's done has been prosecutorial.
Well, and my personal, if they asked for my opinion, Rudy Giuliani should be Attorney General. That is his area of expertise. He was a federal prosecutor for many years. He understands that legal justice environment.
You could have gone with Gowdy as well, but he was never on the Trump train
No, that's the other part of that. Now they are talking about Senator Jeff Sessions
from Alabama.
from Alabama, and now I've forgotten now which position they were. Was it defense? Ah, I've forgotten.
Quickly, got about 30 seconds. How about Governor Otter for Interior?
Um, nice consideration, although I'm not sure. I could think of maybe Senator Risch for Interior. Otter might take Interior, although keep in mind during the last campaign cycle, he made it very clear to everybody, this is my last hoorah. I'm going to serve my 4 years as governor. I'm done. I'm going to retire. I'm going to hang up my hat. 2 years as Secretary of Interior and then hang up your hat, not a bad play. And he has got a great deal of experience in interior issues.
And he already knows where all the best restaurants in Washington are.
Yeah, the Department of Interior, it should not be headquartered or located in
Right.
Washington,
It should be in
D.C.
Jackson Hole.
It should be in Boise, Idaho, because the primary responsibility is within 500 miles of Boise, Idaho.
There you
So
go.
they can eliminate that one function in Washington and move it to, well, I shouldn't even say this, move it to Idaho, but that's where the work's done.
We'll see you next week. We've
Yes, you
got
will.
news coming up in just a couple of minutes from Fox. Also, one more hour of top story, and we expect to be joined by Grant Lobes in studio, our Twin Falls County prosecutor. It's 39.